Welcome to Financial Investing Radio, where you'll learn the secrets for consistent, high-probability returns in the financial markets for additional income to change your life. Grant creates consistent, high-probability trading systems for the financial markets and has applied them over the past 5 years. He's only recently started sharing these tried and true market secrets. As a gift to listeners, Grant is offering his high-probability indicators for free. Go to financialinvestingradio.com and download yours today. Now, here's your host and trading veteran, Grant Larson.
Okay, hey everybody, this is Grant, and welcome to another episode of Financial Investing Radio. Thank you for joining me here today. I'm very excited because I've got one of my mentors on with me today. I went and fell at his knees and said, "Please, Tim, please come join me," and he was kind enough to do that. So I wanted to introduce you to Tim Justice. Tim?
Well, I'll tell you, I must be pretty easy because it didn't take that much, asking. I was excited to see your name again in my email inbox, and always fun to hear from you, Grant, and excited to be here. And I did not know you were doing this, and I just got such pride, and I was really, I thought it was really cool to see that you're out there building a podcast and you're starting, that part of your journey. It's interesting, as we watch the markets and whatnot, and how people trade and how they end up becoming social creatures if they choose to. And hopefully this is fun. Is it fun for you? Are you enjoying that part of it?
Yeah, I'm really having a blast. It was, as you and I were talking offline there for a minute, one of my sons had inspired me to do this. In fact, he was the same son that inspired me to start looking into trading, and so he finally had to convince me to. Sounds like a good
son, by the way.
What's that?
I love it. It sounds like a good son. First of all, he got you into trading to begin with.
He did, yeah.
And he got you starting to podcast.
No, get me out of my shell.
I like this kid. What's his kid's name?
His name is Steven.
Oh, yeah. I got it. All right. Is he a trader?
Well, he started down that journey, and then after a while he said, "Dad, I'm not sure this is for me, but I can tell it's for you," and he was right. So it definitely stuck with me.
Got it.
Let me tell my audience a little bit about you, if you don't mind. So Tim was a big influence. He doesn't realize this, but I reached out to him because he was a big influence on my trading early on, and so I wanted to reconnect with him. I wanted to first, publicly thank him for what he's done and the impact that he had on me. This started about 5 years ago, and I've shared my backstory with you a little bit, but my son had convinced me to go listen to some trading workshop, and I went under duress. I did not want to be there. I thought, hey, I'm just going to be a good dad. I'm going to go support him. I ended up thinking, oh my gosh, wait a minute. If I could figure out a way to get probabilities and trade with probabilities, then the math part, was going to work out. So I ended up taking some training courses, and part of the training courses was I met Tim. Tim became one of my mentors, became a personal mentor, and I was just going back in time with Tim earlier today. We're thinking about some of the journey and the lessons learned through that process, but I wanted to sort of emphasize how important it is to have a mentor. And so I wanted Tim here so that I could point to you guys, look, you want a mentor, right? Whether I'm the mentor, whether Tim's the mentor, whoever it is, you're going to want a mentor, and you're going to want to stay close to him. And I was telling Tim this story earlier today. I just need to. Tim had been helping me with some options trades, and we were putting on a strangle on an earnings report on Netflix. Anyway, if you're not familiar with what kind of trade that is, that's not important. The important part was that Tim had told me to trade it a certain way, and I didn't do it exactly how he said. I ended up not doing it the right way, and I learned a painful financial lesson. It was recoverable, and those lessons generally are recoverable if you're safe. But yeah, stay close to your mentor. So first of all, Tim, thanks for being my mentor.
Well, you are very welcome, my friend. You don't have to thank me. You paid for it. The reality is we're still working together because of who we are as people. But that first mentorship, and people ask me all the time, Grant, how do you get a mentor? And I'll even hear every now and then, I know this one guy who's like third cousin to my sister's side of the family that's trades stocks. Maybe he'll mentor me or she'll mentor me. And I'm just thinking that's silly. The only real way to get professional training from somebody is to do what Grant did, and Grant ended up, and he had to pay money to do that at one point. And Grant, you came into my office because after you'd gone through your skepticism of being in a first event, and you just told me these stories just today, actually, about how that first workshop went. Because you and we were already at the back end of your training, right? You'd already gone through classes and all that, so you're already just fired up, ready to go. And you'd gone through that, and at some moment you said, you know what, I can do this, right? And then you went through the process. And one thing I and still am very impressed by you, Grant, is that you're very much a sponge, and you're coachable, and you ask questions, and then you listen to the answer. Grant, you've gotten obviously something going on here, and I love it. I think it's awesome and very exciting to hear your passion and your energy towards, sending your message out there. So you're more than welcome for me being your mentor, but don't forget, I do think you remember cutting that check, right?
Yeah, but it was a check well worth it. So again, thank you. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your journey. So my audience has heard a little bit about my journey, but can you talk about your journey? How long you've been trading, what got you started, those sorts of things.
Well, I can give, first of all, I could tell this story forever because it is my life, obviously. So I'm going to get down to maybe some points I think might be interesting. Hopefully they are. I started this when I got out of college, and I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And I went to school in Southern Utah University, Grant. You know where Cedar City, Utah is. Small town, small school, and I studied political science and history, and I thought, I'm going to go into law school. And long story short, just didn't work out, and didn't get a good LSAT score, didn't want to move states, kind of a hometown kid, so I needed to find something different. And I thought about a lot of things. Thought about going into big league umpiring. I got an invitation to go to Major League Umpire School, which would have been a track into the minor league. I used to do that. I enjoy sports and grew up in a sports family. Thought about that. Thought about going and getting a job working for an auto dealership as a salesperson. I was actually in training in that summer of 2005, and I just didn't like it. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, the longer I'm around this world, the more I am impressed by good salespeople in any industry, because that's what their job is, to help people, and really, match service and need with whatever it is they're moving, right? But it just wasn't where my head was at the time. And I had a friend, his name's Aaron, and Aaron I grew up with since we were little kids, and his father-in-law was one of the founders of a stock education company. We were on the golf course. I was complaining to him. I said, hey, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, on and on and on. He said, why don't you go take this class? And I did. He said, well, why don't you interview for a position as, a phone rep? And I did. And they gave me a part-time at-home job answering hotline phone calls, and then I eventually became a coach. Then I got to know a bunch of different coaches and mentors, and I just was all in. Honestly, when I'm compulsive like that. When I decide I want to do something, whether it's master chess or, adopt a new hobby or whatever it is, I usually kind of just focus on it. And when trading found my life, I was was hooked from day one, honestly, and that was 12 years ago. And it's been an amazing journey since then. Obviously, a million different changes in direction and pivots and different strategies and components and relationships. But, the financial markets have literally just been my life now for 12 years, as a trader, as an investor, as a coach, as a mentor. I've had the good fortune of creating content, and writing manuals and books and all kinds of stuff. So it's been amazing, and it's really kind of landed in my lap, honestly, Grant. I didn't go searching for it.
Yeah, but you certainly did something with it. So everyone knows, Tim and his brother Matt run a trading community called Trading Justice. You got to check them out. They do some really some awesome work there. Certainly has impacted me. When you think about people that are just getting started with trading, Tim, what would be some tips that you would suggest to them?
Number one, always be passionate and get excited. But be coachable, okay? It's like anything in life, you know. You should get fired up to get up and, you know, over a big new driver, tailor-made, you know, whatever it is, Nike driver, and try to hit it as far as you can, but realize you might put a few balls into the water, right? You're going to have risk when you're new, and you need to be coachable, be willing to make mistakes, and do it in ways that you can recover from. The business of trading. You know, I have a mentor who taught me once, Grant, there's three ways to get anywhere. You can walk, you can drive, you can fly. So if you want to walk, that means you're going to get a bunch of YouTube videos and books, which some people instinctively want to do. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a list of great books out there, I'm sure. You know, Van Tharp books, Mark Douglas, you know, mindset books. But that's not really going to give you a business, especially in today's market. And Grant, you know that, you know, being an algorithmic guy, coder, the software background you have, the way the markets work, you need a little bit more than just that. Right. You can drive, you can kind of get some community-based programs, listen to this podcast, Financial Investing Radio Podcast, you know, obviously with Grant, share it with your friends, you know, build relationships with people like Grant who've been through that before. I think those are important things, but I would say if you're new, realize your job is to do this forever. Because if you properly build the right business in trading, you can do this for the rest of your life on your own terms, your own time, your own freedom. You have access to the financial markets, which is a $200 billion a day market just in stocks alone. You add derivatives and currency and all that. I mean, it's the biggest business in the world. So just take it one step at a time. And there's a phrase we use all the time, Grant, in my workshop, and that's trust the process. Right? The process is not to go out and put all your money on one trade your first month and try to get rich. It's to take it proper steps and to build the foundations underneath what are a real good business.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, I know that with your trading, I remember several of the techniques and setups that you and I had worked through all those years ago. Today, when you're trading, what are some of the favorite trade strategies that you use still today?
Yeah, my go-to strategies are always going to be theta positive. So when I'm busy or I've got trips planned or kids going or whatnot, naked put, iron condor, vertical credit spread, they're kind of like, to use a football reference, like a 7-yard curl, you know, or a nice sweep and something easy that everybody on the team has done 1,000 times, you know. There's always, I mean, again, any system has design, rules, exits, you know, expectations, things that maybe you have gone in with your audience or not, I don't know. But usually, let's keep it high level. So I'll go with something that's what we call cash flow, right? And then outside of that, really, when I have the time to do the research, the design, I love volatility, like you know, Grant. Right. And that's volatility building, volatility crashing, earnings-based trading. There's extra variables that go into that, and also the psychology of dealing with the unknown after a gap, or how to deal with the market and get a good fill. There's some advanced skills I would say that you would need, but I love cash flow and volatility. Those would be the two broad areas I would describe. Things I'm excited about, I'm doing some testing right now on a butterfly system, combination option strategy. I've been doing some day trading in the Forex and futures market the last few years, scalping type ideas, you know, but, you know, just always in the market. The markets can adapt. Same kind of principles will always apply. It's about matching something that works in that market.
Okay, that's wonderful. In terms of determining probabilities, what do you use today to help you do that?
Well, obviously delta, probability of touching, probability of expiring, the probability cones. You know, it's tough because if you just rely on one component of market measure, like implied volatility, because really I guess the wild card there, or the one central thing, is always an implied volatility measure that will then project out into these fancy tools, right? You know, but the reality is you have to understand implied volatility can be measured incorrectly as well. So you're assuming that the implied volatilities are proper and accurate, but I do look at a lot of that data, you know, and I use what I guess could only be described as a subjective view of objective analysis, right? So I'm using my own judgment based on the objective measures of implied volatility and delta and the tools that you can use to project that out to determine those probabilities. A lot of it is, and I got to tell you, instinctively, I'm catching my head because I usually teach a lot of new traders, and this kind of conversation usually would intimidate a beginner. So give me an idea of what your audience is like. Are these veterans? Are these newbies? Are we scaring the heck out of them here, Grant? What's going on? Like, give me paint me a picture here.
It's a blend. There's going to be some that are new and some that are actually very seasoned, very skilled. So it'll be a cross.
So you have historical and actual volatility expectations using measurements like Bollinger Bands, ATR, things like that. I don't honestly find one to be that much dynamically better than the others. Technicians and people like a fellow mentor of both of ours, Jeff Crystal, would say is he's got all of his special things that he likes. I think that those are usually, you could debate one or the other. So you can have an actual historical measurement that's projecting based on actual price movement today, but let's use some common sense. How far does it normally move at this time of day and why, right? The longer you trade the same product, you start to get an inherent feel for that product. It's like playing the same golf course over and over and over again. You don't have to worry about the theoretical if you've played that same hole 100 times, If you're a crude oil trader and you trade it every single day, you get a real good feel for the difference in volatility on a Wednesday versus a Monday, which is where I like to keep it simple, Grant, and trade the same kind of products quite often. Big stocks, big liquid, weeklies, things like that, and use volatility measures like that.
That's one of. I want to go back to something you said I thought was really key, and that was to focus on just a few items. I remember early on my trading, I try to get across so many different instruments to trade, and let's try this stock and then this, and after a while it became so much, I finally realized I had to narrow it in and get to know the personality of the various instruments. How many in general do you tend to look at? Is it 5, 10, 15 at most?
Well, I trade crude oil. I have for 12 years, and I love crude oil in almost every fashion you can imagine. The ETF and USO, CL, the futures contract, the options on crude oil. So I like crude. It kind of relates to me as a person. I'm a global thinker. I like the politics behind what happens when OPEC is doing something and affects the supply and demand measures. I find it interesting. I think there's something about my brain that likes it. So I trade a lot of crude oil. I trade gold and silver, but predominantly I'm using those metals products, as a way to trade directionally off of some of this macro news. I like trading the index options, Grant, more and more. Over the years, I'm with you. And even 8 years ago, 6 years ago, I would have a bigger list of stocks that I would be willing to trade than even today. My current watch list is about 25 stocks. I'm willing to scan and go deeper than that, obviously, on strategies. When you've traded long enough, you know pretty much most every company in the S&P 500 fairly well. But when it comes down to when I need to confidently pull the trigger on a product I know with a strategy I know, the major indexes, the futures contracts, things like that usually are a little easier. Like, I'll give you a simple example. The S&P 500 options, the actual index options. Cash settled, European style, you're dealing with 500 companies, you don't have the same corporate risk. So, yeah, a lot of products you would imagine most traders use, and then my 25, 30 favorite stocks that I like to look at.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, Tim, you've definitely influenced myself and a lot of other people that you've mentored over the years, and I just want to thank you again for taking the time to come on here, to let me introduce you to my audience, and to verbally thank you for all that you've done. Any last final tips that you want to share with my audience?
Yes. Yeah, I got a big one. Number one, live an exciting life of purpose. And I'll never forget meeting Grant. I'll tell a story. I told this earlier to you, Grant, and I'll repeat it here on your podcast. When one memory I had of Grant when we first were mentoring is there in my office. I have an office in Salt Lake City, Utah, and it's a little tiny office in this old hotel, and I like it. It's quirky. It's weird. By the way, Grant, they've renovated that hotel and made it a lot nicer. And I moved and got a window and the whole thing. So, but you should come back and visit me.
I will.
But I remember every couple hours, Grant and I would walk around the city. And Salt Lake is a small little town, if you really, it's a million people in the valley, but really Salt Lake feels like a small town. And we'd wander around and walk around, and we'd get to the light, and it would start to flash at us saying, hey, you only got 6 seconds, 8 seconds. And I'd look at it, and then I'd look at Grant, and pretty much without fail, Grant, you would just charge forward. And you'd laugh, and you'd say, he who hesitates is lost. And I enjoyed your fun nature and your humor and also your approach to life and your attitude. It was contagious, and that's what I love about mentoring. You know, this whole thing. Live a life of purpose, go out and have some fun. The markets are incredible, and you guys out there, you can achieve what Grant's achieved. And this stuff is just, if it's brand new, welcome. If you're a veteran, hopefully you can pick up some tips and listen to a veteran like Grant. I think that's great. But just enjoy it. You know, enjoy the ride. It's up and down.
Tim, thanks so much. That's very kind. Yes, I do remember walking those streets, and I was going to point that out earlier. You were always so good at saying, step away from the computer, you know, let your brain settle in and digest, take a breath, get away from the markets for a little bit, then you come back with fresh intent. So definitely one of the major best practices, as well as a million others that I picked up from you. Well, live life like you mean it, right? So I really appreciate you. Really appreciate you sharing that. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining, and again, thanks to Tim for being here. This is Grant Larson, and until next time, trade safe.
Thank you for joining Grant on Financial Investing Radio. Remember to subscribe and leave feedback. Don't forget to download your free high probability indicators before your next trade. Visit financialinvestingradio.com now.